Eżatt. So għadna ħanibdew il-logħba, okay? So we're just gonna start off the game. What does that mean? Issa from Champ Select, the game has already started. Issa at the highest level of play, where two teams are completely equal, okay? Champ Select is where the game is won from. Alright? It's not a small detail. Champ Select is actually one of the most important things in League of Legends, because it's going to set the tone for how the early game is being played. Now, the early game is arguably the most important part of the entire game, but of course, as everyone knows, how you transition is potentially the second most important part of the game. So those are mostly the topics we're going to be discussing today, outlining what differentiates the zone. So what is an early game, what is the mid game, what is late, how to identify in between, and correct transitions from one phase to another. Now, going back to the Champ Select.
Jan, street tagħti rolling biex jitma' n-nies?
Ejja, għala u xaħat?
Yes.
Min?
Sinister.
Ma da ma kienx. Alright, ejja, s-sena. Da mux ma tal-lejla da, għaxek. Eżatt. Dat, le, għan issa nkellmu. Da l-lejla suppost. Ġejta għan meġmi. Ja. Okay. So when we are looking at the Champ Select, what's important to keep in mind? You need one or two hard carries, depends on the type of carry, okay? And so you can have games where you don't have a specific one hard carry, but you can have like there's a term for champions who are like overstated, like Mordekaiser, like Yorick to some extent, like Udyr. They essentially will beat you in a 1v1 or Fiora. You can have a combination of these champs, but you're not gonna mostly be playing most of the time for team fight specifically. You're looking to end it and later on in the mid game. But in general, when we're looking to make, it's not that popular in professional play. It made some appearance, but usually the standard has always been to have one or two hard carries, be it mid or AD carry, or AD carry and jungle, or jungle and mid. To have then the rest of the team being enablers, either engaging, either reducing statistics or helping in the damage, or any form of assistance to the carry. It could be like a bruiser stunning someone or something like that, and or of course the enchanters. Okay, enchanters are very, very strong, especially nowadays. They've been strong for a while. Very easy to get a character, like sometimes a character gets a tiny buff and it's OP. So, an enchanter is essentially like a patch note within a game that gives that champion a buff for a few seconds, and of course some champions can really do very well with that. So in solo queue it's not really the biggest concern, even in professional league. I'm sure it's not the end of the day if they don't draft oh yeah, I didn't mention this, a good mix of AP and AD. Okay, that's what I was leading into. It's not going to always be the be all end all if you draft a good mix of AP and AD, but drafting a mix of AP and AD really helps the mid to late game transitioning, because gold can be funneled into two defensive items rather than potentially maybe everyone buying just one tank item, which can like really harm your team, especially when your team, like let's say you have a lot of like auto attack heavy champions. Anyone builds Frozen Heart and Randuin's, it's not gonna be the best experience for those players. Um, so making that mix is good because even the champions can even target, like let's say top lane had a matchup into Graga, so he built magic resist. So now we ask if possible the jungle or the ADC to try and kill that top laner because he has magic resist or something like this, right? So that's that. The more like obstacles you can create for your opponent, almost the better. So that's done. We've picked our champs. We're going into the game. Now from champ select, a lot of things can be done. It's I believe a missed opportunity. A lot of people don't use too often. But from champ select, we should be looking at some key things, which are the jungle, what type of clear types they are. Are they level 3 jungler? Are they level 2 jungler? Or are they full clear jungler? Okay, so this comes with experience. In general, though, you know, if you know at least some of the jungler's abilities, if they have good AoE damage, you know, consistent AoE damage, they are likely to be a full clear jungler. Again, don't take everything for granted, you know, or if they have some form of CC ability and then like damaging spells, they usually are level 3 junglers. That's usually it. Some champions like Jarvan can get away with level 2, Xin Zhao can get away with level 2, Graves-ish, Nuno-ish, you know, then it depends on how much they are cheesing, but it's good to know the standards and then keep in mind cheese for any champion because you never know who's playing realistically, but it can be avoided, which is what we're going to be talking about because aggression should always come with purpose. I feel it's not something where you're bored or you should like try to show your damage or something. You know, there needs to be some form of purpose behind it. So I spoke about the jungle clear types. Level 1 abilities we should look out for as well. This will help us to decide how we're going to start the game. So, you know, like Taric E, Blitzcrank Q, Cho'Gath Q, a bunch of abilities that could be taken at level 1, Shen, taunts as well, and this sort of stuff. If we think the enemy has a great level 1, we should take that into account and play. Like I said, since aggression always has to have a purpose, same purpose, right? So if we know that there's a Blitzcrank, the only way to ensure he will never hit Q is to never be in its range. So we must play with these sort of understandings in mind. And when we do that, we have truly countered our enemy. The next thing we need to look at is the top lane matchups. This is a bit of a newer sort of thing that we're seeing. It's becoming a bit more standard that either a jungle or a support, if they see that the top lane matchup is ranged against melee, if your top laner is melee and your opponent is ranged, you know, dropping a ward around the 1 minute mark in the middle bush can significantly help your top laner out. So this is something I would recommend as well if you don't think the enemy is invading and we're starting off with quite a regular setup. I would recommend, if possible, the support, and then the ADC can use his ward at a specific time to know if they're going to get ganked or not. But anyway, that's some other things, you know, maybe he can't because the way the wave works or something, you know, or they need the two wards. For bot lane, then maybe, you know, if not the mid lane, maybe the jungle can do it and then prioritize to gank top or something like that, you know. So these are something we have to look at. Lastly, the mid lane matchup. The mid lane matchup specifically is only in regards to assassins. If you have a mid lane matchup where your mid laner, oops, what's going on there? What's up? Alright. So if the mid lane matchup is someone that can get killed at level 2, level 3, it is, I guess, the jungler and support's job to see this and to rotate appropriately, because you would say, but you know, it sounds weird or stuff. You do this once, you do this twice, the game's over. That's it. You've won. So that's why it's important to do these things and to notice these things. Early game, as we said, is the most important thing. So what are we looking for in the early game? To have a good early game, we are looking for mostly XP. Okay? Gold sometimes can come as a byproduct of having XP in the early game. Because with having XP, and we're talking the enemy doesn't have kills naturally, right? So it's not the case where they have gold, and we're just talking simply level advantage, no gold, 0-0, okay? If no team kills, nothing. XP is going to be the thing that's going to help you gain objectives, force things, and set the tone for how the game should be played. So in the early game, the more we can look to, you know, there's so many things that we can do in the early game, but the more we can push the lead, even so slightly, by maybe faking a recall or doing something which is like, anyway, we'll get into some of the strategies, but because I don't want to get mixed up. But essentially, keeping in mind that XP is probably the most important thing you need in the early game. Of course, gold at any point in time in the game, but I would argue that gold is most important than to transition from the early game into the mid game. While XP, you know, if you have a good level, but then you don't have items, especially in this meta, you're not gonna have a very good mid game. So let's see what we can do here. Mala. So we've checked out the stuff. Is what to decide. So are we going to invade? Are we going to split the map? Or are we going to do a late invade? Now, late invade and invade are not the same. So in my opinion, every game should be with a form of invading, one side or the other. Now, you can take safe routes. Let's start to use the other monitor. So we explain what safe routes are. Alright, let's use this. Alright. Can we save it? Yes. Okay. So, say we start here, okay? So from here, a safe route would be, let's say, for mid lane we're going through here. This is of course if we don't win the level 1, okay? But we're still going to invade, because we need to know. We need to know, here, if you come here, you either meet the same team who's gonna do the same, and you can assess accordingly, or they might be coming here, and by the time they reach here, you're already here. So you can see them transition. We need someone to be here. It's a very important part. They can even potentially extend outwards, because by the time the enemy reaches around here, we can get cover of this area, and this areas of course will be covered like this. Okay, so that's covering our red side. Now when it comes to the other side here, when we're covering the blue side from here, with same principle here through the mid lane, there is an argument to be made to come through this side. But when you do this, if the enemy actually decided to go for a full stack here because they think you might ward this bush here or try to put a ward here, the moment they see you crossing over, you do not know, and they will just close you off here. So always the safest way to do it is to come through here. You can then see, you know, if any champion has come, you can extend yourself a bit, and I would recommend, you know, if you are the mid laner, for example, doing this, potentially dropping a ward here at around the 130, or you know, or some after like the first wave has come or something, like can really help. If not, you can place it at around the 1 minute 15-20 mark when the minions come over. This will help you knowing where the jungler starts, where he's going to transition if you're going to get ganked from here as a mid laner. The support can also do this if they anticipate the jungler to rotate into mid lane, although it's not the most popular thing right now. I would say the most popular thing for junglers at the moment is to transition either into top or bot ganks. I so rarely see junglers choosing level 2s or going mid lane while they're transitioning from one side to the other. But they do happen, you know. Sometimes if there's like a Poppy, Shinzao, Jarvan, these all love to gank mid laners like that. So even Lee Sin. So having that ward on the rates potentially helps a lot here. Especially if we know where the jungler started, right? The idea behind having someone, behind having someone here and here is that we can gradually start to maybe walk over here and see what's going on here, if the jungler is starting here or not. So this is when we don't win the level 1. In case we do win the level 1, that's gonna be a bit different. So I would recommend choosing a side, either going through the red or blue side. It doesn't really matter, but you know, if you want a fight, usually people fight around the bot lane more often. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can, you know, stack. You can stay here, send one guy out, they get caught, come back. But you know, all of these things, they're gonna work in solo queue most of the time. They're not gonna work in an actual game. In an actual game, where people are thinking, we go into late invades, okay? I don't know how common this is. I have not played in high elo for an extraordinarily long time, so I don't know how popular this is, but it's the correct play. You essentially just chill, do the same start as before, the normal start. Or something I forgot to mention as well, arguably top laner can be here or can transition into here, but the second point here, be careful, because sometimes you might be spotted here and you might get collapsed on. So you know, here is a good place, potentially being here, and then at around like 110 you walk the long way. Some top laners might want to camp this bush. We even discussed if maybe, you know, the enemy top has like a range support, sorry, a range top laner. We can start off by you know, sending the mid here, ADC here, and then support top and jungle can literally just make sure that these entrances have not been crossed. Transition here, make sure no one's in the bush, put down the ward at around 1 minute, go back to our regular life, you know. So there's those things to do. Keep in mind that sweepers give experience and gold. You know, if you're using the sweeper and somebody else destroys it, both of you get that. So in the early game, like we discussed, XP is very important. Of course, from level 17 to level 18, there's a lot more experience than what you would need from level 1 to 2. So that little bit of experience on a ward is always helpful in case you do start off like that and the support or ADC or the jungler, whoever, gets the red trinket on the next recall. Keep in mind where the wards are and try to, like, if it's a support, give it to the ADC, is what I'm trying to say. Unless they're, you know, not a human person and they decide to completely ignore it, because it happens. So, Mela. We haven't even started the game, huh? Popular wards for level 1. I wouldn't waste too many wards, okay? Ideally level 1 should only be used to know where the enemy jungler is starting, to potentially mess with them. Sorry, late invades. I was gonna skip over that part. So when it comes to late invades, we're gonna stack at around 120. So we're starting off normally. At around like the 115 mark, we can start walking. There's potentially this bush, which, you know, it might be warded. This is why the early start is good, because we know if in case it is warded, we'll go through down here, okay? We of course know where the jungler started. If they started around here, we do the same. Now this bush can be warded, so I would idealize you know, stacking here at the 1 minute mark, starting to walk here, and potentially, you know, joining here at around the like 135. we are all here. Same principle here. Like 35, you know, we are here ready to fight. The jungler likely used an ability, the ADC as well, the support as well. Abilities have been used, you know, maybe we can force a flash or something, get the buff ourselves, get a level 2, a lot of things can happen, especially if we have the good level 1. If you're in solo queue, try to type before, like 120, you're typing like Amumu or Soraka or whatever, like type who you're focusing, who you want to kill quickly, because it's gonna make a difference. Especially in the early game, I would argue, because there's not too many health and stuff. You know, 3 attacks all at once, they tend to, you can surprise the enemy, maybe they forget to flash. Maybe if you have abilities like Tarek Stun or Blitzcrank Q, don't use them immediately if you have the upper hand until they flash, and you can use it after. Like I said, it all depends from game to game. But in that case, in that game, if you're doing the late invade, you have chosen to do it because you have better abilities, and it's to direct the pressure off the enemy jungler. You can take that. If you do manage to take it, your jungle can transition from here into his own blue side and then potentially attack the red side, or he can go directly into red, Gromp, red buff enemy or something like that. There's many ways they can do it. I don't want to turn this into a jungle oriented early game, but that's the only time we're going to look into the late invades. Now in solo queue, yes, you can technically with any comp come here, stack in this bush or stack in this bush, and some random person will come, or you might find like 5 people or here, or this invade style here is good, but I don't know who is not covering that entrance. But yeah, I mean, something you can also do is if you want to stack early and you want to maybe potentially invade straight up and get down some wards to definitely know where the jungler is. Let's say he's like a Jarvan who level 2s really well, or Trundle or something. All 5 can come here, but like 3, 2, 1, go and start walking. We can check here if they're not here, go through here, and we get a good vision. So likely this, but if this happens, we might have an issue, because if they are not here, we might need to split the map in that case. So we're gonna position, we're just gonna guard the entrances. This can potentially be a mid laner, and this can be potentially a support and ADC and jungler here. And we can take the buff, and the jungler can then take their blue side. The other jungler, what this means is the other jungler likely started at your red, and the bot lane is around here, or they likely have warded, or they know, or something like that. Splitting the map isn't always ideal. You want to split the map ideally when you have a really good clearing jungler, if possible, or to disadvantage a weak jungler. But this is quite advanced. It's barely even used in professional play. So, maybe for another time we'll talk about splitting the map. But that's the only time you might face it in regular everyday games, when you went to invade and the jungler is not there. Okay, so in that case, I would recommend even potentially the support to hang around a bit, just to see that, or maybe drop a ward here, just to see if your jungler can take enemy red rates, etc. Does it work the same the other way around? The other way around is potentially you go through here, but this is very scary. Here there is a lot of vision, they can see you, so from this side you're not really gonna be invading. That's why this is referred to as weak side. If I'm wrong about that, I'm stupid, but as far as I'm aware, this is considered the weak side of the map, while this is considered the strong side. It's just based on the structure of how the map is laid out, dragon being nestled, and and access to jungles and invades. So whenever we're on blue side and we want to invade, I'm gonna go through the red buff area, or potentially through top lane. You might find the enemy top laner is here. We can casually get him from both sides, or we can traverse the area, drop some wards, take enemy red buff, and then your jungler can do a full clear into here. If in that case, of course, mid laner or the support would be expected to either ward river or here right after like the 150th mark or something like this. As you can see, a lot of things in the early game, because we are just trying to ensure a potential lead, something where we can catch a mistake. You know, a mistake is only a mistake if it is capitalized by us. If it is not capitalized, it's not a mistake, it's an advantage. So, you know, if the enemy can play like that, so be it. But we try to read into it. So, going into actual lanes now. Unfortunately, the like laning where, you know, we've like secured ourselves, put down the first few wards, etc. That comes after usually the first or second back. So during all this time, we are still in the potential jungle pressure or potential support pressure. That's about as it gets. Supports who do not roam level 2 or level 3 are not playing the role correctly, and ADCs who are dying 1v2 are not playing the role correctly as well. Unless of course they're getting repeatedly dived. In that case, the entire like jungle and support, even mid, can consider potentially going down there. The ideology is that once you get a slow push going, your ADC can hold the slow push, and then the enemies, while they're pushing back, the support is free to roam. Or else the lane can get frozen in the middle, ADCs usually are left there farming alone peacefully, and the supports roam. But you know, we're still in that part of the game, so level 1s matter. Getting a slight push, just a minion ahead, will make you spike level 2. The best players will always notice when they're 1 minion off of level 2, and it will engage very aggressively. In that case, to use both abilities and to damage the enemy while they still don't have that, you know, when we level up we get a bit more health, a bit more armor, etc. So it's always really good to try and go for that level 2. If you think the enemy will get a better level 2 than you, back off, let the wave crash, do your thing, you know, farm CS. You will get back in a gank or two, especially if the enemy has been pushing so aggressively to get that level advantage. You know, a good jungler, a good mid laner will figure it out. If not, you know, you might get into further trouble if we're talking about mid and even, you know, top lane, bot lane. They were all talking about the level 2 power spike here. You might get into a bit of trouble if the enemy plays it correctly then, and if he notices that you've stayed back, they will slow push the wave, potentially freezing it just not so you don't get chunked, because at high levels of play, getting chunked means you're gonna get towered off. So they will hold back, and of course in that case you would definitely need a form of jungle assistance to chunk the enemy laner out so that you can get back your levels and your CS that you've been missing. So it's not really that easy in that sense. That's why, again, picking a good matchup in the beginning is ideal, or a matchup that you can play around. You know, some champions like potentially Silas or Zed, but you know, there's not much of a, you know, some champions really spike after some levels or like after an item, which means it's fine to like give up a bit in the beginning. If it means that the enemy is not gonna keep getting those items, your advantage will eventually come. So they're not gonna keep destroying you. But you know, there are other ways around it. But in general, you can look at it like that. You might have a matchup like, let's say, Kale into other comps. Now, yes, you might find a good Kale killing someone at level 1 or level 2 because they use the passive lethal tempo and stuff. But in general, you know, if Kale player or the, you know, like a Kassadin or something, if they're playing against another person who understands the matchup, who can abuse the fact that they're weaker early on, they will need to either get some help from the jungler, which is also risky, because if the enemy jungler knows this, they might fight a 2v2 and they will beat you. So, you know, you have to kind of work around it, maybe give up a Drake or two, because now we're going to start talking about those transitions into the mid game and what they mean. Those champions usually spike in the mid or late mid game, okay? So it's fine if we give up some stuff in the beginning. Nowadays, at least, there's Rift Herald and there's Drake. where back in the day we did not have this. So you know, if the enemy is like forcing one objective, you can most likely take the other one for free. Not always the case, of course. It's all right. It's something I would like to talk about more in the early game before we transition. The first item you prioritize. I think this is a very important thing as well. You know, how you're starting to set up your build, looking at the enemy team, who's potentially CSing better, who's going to be the main damage source, noticing your enemy's win condition. For example, you say, they picked Diana Yasuo. Okay, then I guess Frozen Heart would be a really great item, but should I buy it on the first item, not, or should I buy it on my third? In that case, if the Yasuo was mid, Diana is jungle, and you're the top laner, potentially the third item is good enough, because, or the second item, depends on how fast the mid game comes. If you're the support, you might want to consider building it the first item. On some champions, of course, not on all, but it's a cheap item, it's a good armor, it gives you CDR, it reduces the attack speed of your enemy AD carry, and it's a good item you're gonna carry for the rest of the game, because they have Diana Yasuo. So, these are things that we need to consider. Some champs get extremely countered by some items, like something comes to mind is Renekton. If you build... I haven't seen the matchup in a long time, but I know for a fact that for a long period, it might still be the case. If you build Bramble Rest first item against Renekton, he's not gonna have a good time in the lane. So there's like these items that sometimes, can really hard counter some enemies, and thinking about them, or maybe going Cull to farm up, you're gonna be like, listen, I am just not going to take engage, I'm not going to trade, nothing, I'm gonna sit back, I'm gonna maybe potentially lose some CS, it's fine, but I'll have Cull, and with Cull, I will come back, because every minion is worth a bit more, so, that's fine too. Now, cheater recalls. So, let's say, we've been talking about this level 1, let's say we did it correctly, we got the level 2 advantage, fully engaged on the enemy, got them to burn their summoners, or maybe they're like 200 health away, something, you need to sit down by the tower to last hit. Excellent. So, what do we do from this point? If you've killed the enemy, we push the lane. This will create a reset, because, you can go back, come back, and the wave will likely be somewhere in the middle, with only potentially losing 1. If you're very unlucky, 2 CS. If the opponent has teleport, we can opt for a small freeze with a jungler gank, or potentially, if depending on the champion matchups again, that freeze can be turned into a slow push. The enemy can never engage on you because you have a lot of minions. If they do, you of course kite back, your minions are doing the damage for you. And with the slow push, the enemy is forced to back off, the wave will crash, and you get what is known as a cheater recall. No, so a cheater recall is a recall where it sounds like cheating, right? That's why we call it cheater recall. You've sent a bunch of minions to the enemy, they need to clear them, right? They need to take them. But in the meantime, while they're clearing them, it's taking them so much time that you've managed to go back to base, get an item advantage, health, mana, and go back to the lane without potentially losing anything. No XP, no gold. So now they've cleared the wave that you've already have cleared a while back. So now they're on the same, maybe potentially XP level, but you have an item. So now you can start to bully them. It's the same principle like the level 2. So now, as you can start to see, items start to take us away from the early game, and they start to push us into the mid game. Having an item advantage is the potential transitioning factor. When we start having items are very strong currently. We can start walking into enemy territory without feeling any worries about it. Ideally, of course, everyone is on the same page, because walking in alone, it's still quite early. Just having one item, it depends, of course, how early they got it. But some champions can do it better than others. But the main point I'm trying to get across is, if you have an item advantage, you should be going into enemy territory. Okay, this should be The only thing in your mind, not the laning, you should be pushing, you should be putting down deep wards, you have to be taking buffs, you have to be stealing stuff, because the enemy can never engage into you, and if they do, they will lose even more. So this is the mid game. The mid game is accessible to anyone that starts transitioning into this, getting the items and stuff. Some champions will transition before others, helping other champions to transition. Some lanes have a different meaning. For example, top and bot lane, we'll see they're transitioning into the mid game. Specifically by bot lane, I mean the ADC, okay? Support doesn't really matter. I would say the mid game for support starts at level 3. Okay, so they're all a bit different. Top lane, usually at around the first tower, potentially second item, or when they start to split bot lane. That could be their mid game. And also something I did not mention, but luckily here today we only have Lucas, who's top lane. I'm sure he knows this, but it is quite standard, or becoming more standard, for the winning top laner that's making the slow push, who's done the level 2 advantage on the third wave to go and ward. So back onto the Summoner's Rift, if we are on here, we are on red side, third wave crashed, we are warding here, or here, or here, just to get an idea if we're gonna get ganked or not. Or potentially we can even kill the jungler. Some junglers get very low at this point. Scuttle is spawning as well. Your jungler might be there, so it's a very good idea to start rotating here when you're crashing the third wave, and he's, we call that lane priority. I'm sure Lucas knows about this, but whenever we're talking about lane priority, you hear this word prio. We are essentially talking the wave is about to crash into an enemy tower, or the enemy laner is going to lose extremely significantly for not being in the lane. You already have some advantage, and any more losses will turn it into a significant loss for them. If you are on blue side, where are we going to gank? Usually you can, where are we going to ward? You can ward Tribrush, you can ward somewhere around here for the Scuttle area if they're gonna come through river. And you can even see them a bit from here. It's a bit harder, but again, we called it the weak side, but you can like stay in this bush, potentially after crashing the wave. They don't know if you've recalled or not. You can see them coming through here or here. This side is probably the worst side to be laning on if you want to ward, but you can always try a ward. It's not the easiest, honestly, but you might want a ward here. I heard a ward here helps, potentially a ward here, but this is only going to cover so much. Maybe I just invented a ward now, but maybe you can place a ward here to see if the jungler is around here or crossing the Tribrush area. Could be a thing, but in general, if you're gonna be on this side, try and freeze a bit more, and if you're gonna push it, go for a tower dive, because tower dives are a bit easier from this area, especially for the ganking jungler. If you're getting pushed in here, they have this very easy access to the enemy top. So when we are on this side, letting it being pushed against you is actually a pretty good idea. And pushing if you're gonna push, make sure you've chunked the enemy and call for a tower dive potentially. Now a good enemy jungler will know this. Ideally, he will be there as well to catch the dive, but then your jungler should have been tracking this and should know what's what. In that case, you as a top laner either reset, or you go into the bush, chillax, or you can even try proxy farming, which in that case your jungler should immediately go to Drake. But it's an ideal situation for the early